Okay, my first Halloween card of the year right here. I was going to change compositions completely, but I thought, all right, just in the spirit of doing the mood and media featuring this, type of compositional scheme, let's do that, but let's just change a couple elements in here. Not really change the elements, but add a couple elements in here. I had the solar eclipse in here to represent kind of a lunar eclipse, and then I have this dancing skeleton from out of my private collection from Gumbo Graphics that I bought, I don't know, 25 years ago or something like that. But just kind of giving this kind of a murkier, kind of darker color scheme in here. And then I wasn't planning on it, but I was looking at this skeleton. I was thinking about adding in some white gel pen marks into the scene, and I thought, why don't I do something with, it looks like there's this kind of this direction that this skeleton there's a lot of gesture to it. A lot of gesture. And I thought I would do something in the spirit of that gesture and kind of go along with that direction and kind of angle that it's kind of in. So I kind of did this little, I don't know, call it like an S curve here. It looks like a lasso or something like that. And have, make it look like there's this kind of trail of stars or something like that, or just twinkly little lights, coming off of it. And I do see this dancing skeleton as being something like a little figurine, a little figure that, I don't know, he gets to come out and it's having such a great time, but I thought these little dots like that would kind of add a sense of kind of a whimsical nature to it and make it look even more festive and, I don't know, kind of a celebratory type of I don't know, shape, I guess you can say, within the scene. And I think it really became about these dots in here, more than the dancing figure, although the dancing figure is the one that's conjuring it. All these little things like that, so it's like a little, I don't know, Milky Way or something like that, kind of, that it's creating off of the water surface. Maybe there's some specular light that is twinkling on the water surface, and the skeleton is turning it into stars or something like that, putting it out into the cosmos. So anyways, a fun scene to do. I like how it turned out with that kind of that feature in here. I've never done it before with that little skeleton, but I don't know, new ideas for the future. Anyways, if you watched the scene, hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section or log on to Stampscapes.com. Alright, thanks for tuning into the channel. Okay, I love the holidays, and starting off the holidays is Halloween, and I really like the imagery and all of the different things, celebrations around this holiday. And I really like stamping out different types of Halloween scenes, okay? Now, I was going to go with a different composition, but I thought maybe I'll do, 2 or 3 different Halloween cards, okay? Now, to a scenic stamper, the only difference really between a Halloween card and another type of scene, it's just really the imagery that you use. I could stamp out a deer or something like this in here, and then you get scenic stamping. If I stamp out some little kind of dancing skeleton down here, then it's a Halloween card, right? And so on and so forth. But there are different things you can do with the kind of the tones that you use that would kind of be a little bit more specific to Halloween. This card right here doesn't really say Halloween to me, but I could darken this whole area in where, kind of this daytime scene becomes night, and suddenly you have a really good setting for, potentially a Halloween type of setting, or what someone might think of when they think of kind of a spookier looking scene. Now, I'm not necessarily going for horror in this scene right here. I certainly could, but let's see what we can come up with. Now, I really like doing these for multiple reasons, not just for the imagery, but I don't know, it kind of, I don't know, it speaks to my kind of aesthetics in value, value in terms of light and dark. I tend to like kind of the twilight, dusk till dawn types of imagery. I don't know, I'm kind of probably more of a night person. If I am stamping daytime scenes, they tend to be a little bit, less of a high noon type of thing, sunny day. It tends to be more of a foggier day or something like that. Something where I'd be very aware of the space in between the imagery, where I can put down some kind of mist or fog or something like that. I really like that kind of that feeling that you get from something like that. Anyways, I have a little skeleton here. That's a dancing skeleton from Gumbo Graphics, who are no longer around, but that skeleton can be found in many different collections. I've seen it, I don't know, in various sizes over the years. I can't really tell you offhand who those are, because I've kind of forgotten, but you can find it out there, or you can substitute any kind of little figurine if you are doing this scene right here for the purpose of a kind of a holiday, Halloween spirited type of card. I'm going to stamp this out first. I could kind of wait till the end, but this skeleton is not a silhouette. I mean, it's a outline type of design, so I want to get that in there just so I know where it will be, so when I start coloring it in, I won't get it completely dark around there. I probably want to keep this a little bit lighter in here, but I do want some tones behind it. Be one of those cases where if you have some kind of thing that can cut that out, then it'd be easier just to tone it in and to put that over the top of it, kind of a sticker paper or something like that, or something of that sort, but I am not doing that. I'm keeping it really quite simple here. Alright, so if you've been watching these other scenes that I've been doing in this series, you'll know that this is the base composition that I'm working with, the Lakeside Cove and the Pines and Rocks. I have these other images to come. Maybe I'll add those in later, or maybe I'll substitute something just to make this composition a little bit more different, than what I've been doing. Okay, now my general thought as far as the color scheme goes is I'm going to keep this fairly muted. Okay, now looks like I have a lot of green in this. Let me see what I have in this one. That tip there looks fairly clean. Let's keep this kind of in a grayscale, but let's kind of lean more towards the darker values, okay? Now, in some of my other scenes, I've been kind of, a little more careful about smearing, my scenes in here, but this area in here is going to get really, really dark, so I don't care if my stamped imagery smears quite a bit, because it's going to be so dark in there, it's not really going to matter a whole lot. Oh, I almost forgot. I was going to change my imagery a little bit more so, and I thought I would do something that might be kind of akin to a kind of like a solar eclipse. The colors are not going to be so much so, but let's see what we come up with. Actually, I'm not me. Did I say solar eclipse? I meant lunar eclipse. This is the solar eclipse stamp, but there's nothing to say that this can't be, represent a lunar eclipse. Alright, now this is a rectangle, and there is tone around it, but I'm going to soften some of that tone with some blotting off of the ink on the stamp around the edge. Dabbing out, quite, a decent amount. Alright, just with a dry paper towel. And so when I go for the image here, this is going to be a situation where there's not going to be some kind of reflection in the water because I have that dancing skeleton down there. And I don't want that reflection down there because it would obscure the nice kind of silhouette down here. Alright. I didn't ink. Oh, I have a little bit of dust in here. But it's left that kind of that funky little anytime you have solid imagery, you kind of have to remove some of that. I had a bunch of dust on here and stuff. I could see it on my thing. So be it. It will add to the design. But anyways, okay. Now I have this established kind of point in the sky. My idea behind it is this kind of this lunar eclipse, kind of that's one of those, you know, kind of unusual days of the I don't know, the year. Not really. It's not an annual thing, but kind of unusual, kind of a celestial kind of a sky events, I guess you could say. All right, so. Not only is it Halloween, we'll say that this kind of little dancing skeleton is kind of celebrating, you know, this unusual event on the day that, you know, he gets to kind of rise from the grave and, I don't know, to rejoice, you might say. That's what he looks like he's doing to me. So even though this is a skeleton, it's a very happy skeleton, and he doesn't look like he's really interested in bothering anyone. Just having a good time, spending time to himself, you know. He is dancing on a lake here, you know, kind of one of those things that's kind of a little bit more magical, you know. If this thing's dancing on a lake, or maybe it's a frozen lake. If there are frozen lakes in October, and he could be ice skating, we'll see. Alright, kind of adding some tone in here, and you can see I'm kind of leaving some of my rocks a little bit light to look like it's kind of reflecting some light. Even though there is a lunar eclipse, there is a little bit of light in the sky. By the way, this is a Memento London Fog. Really great inks, very slippery and thick. Add a good layer down there, like so. Now, if you have some other gray tones, grab those and add those in as well in a similar fashion. I happen to have a Marvy gray. I'm not sure if I have any other gray colors, you know. For the manufacturers out there, you know what I mean? Gray is not typically a real popular color. I used to sell Marvy pads, and you know what I mean? I wasn't restocking gray very often. Although it can be a very neutral color. There's a lot of you know, kind of an emotional kind of a draw for people to get something gray. They tend to think of it as something quite boring. How many times do you see grayscale types of you know, applications in relation to color ones? You know, it's not very often. So there's not a lot of gray out there. So I have two. I don't know. I might have one more somewhere, but it would probably be like a bluish gray or something like that. It wouldn't be a kind of a neutral gray. That being said, I'll show you how to get those other different gray values in a minute here. Okay, I'm kind of getting a pretty good saturation of this down because I'm finding that the more I add of this existing gray, it's getting a little bit darker. So I will move on to my next value, which will be black, after I've reached a full saturation with this gray. Especially because I have a lot of area to fill in, so there's a lot of coverage that you can get from your existing colors so far. Alright, so there we have that. Kind of looks like a little electric. You see all that dust on there? I haven't used that for a while, so I had a bunch of dust on the stamp. So suddenly it becomes electrical. That's what we used to do in art, you know. You just kind of do your thing, and then later on you had to kind of explain the piece, and not really necessarily in illustration, but in, you know, fine art drawing and painting. I was always thinking, yeah, people are coming up with the reasons afterwards, you know. I always thought it sounded a little bit pretentious. Alright. Adding this down. Black kind of absorbs into the scene pretty fast. So see what I'm doing? I'm kind of staying in an area. Don't try to tone out everything so quickly and instantly. Kind of allow it to build up a little bit and take it slow. I mean, I'm not applying it slow, you know, but I'm not rushing to get the whole thing toned in instantly, you know. I'm just kind of, see how I'm just kind of staying in this bottom corner and really blending this out. That's how you get those nice, easy blends, by kind of sticking in one area and working it. You know, so you're kind of working your zones or areas of tone and hue, and in this case, value. Just kind of going for grayscale. Okay. See, I mean, you can see how dark it is when I kind of dab it down, but the page is getting quite damp, so if I go like that, it looks lighter, so I have to kind of build up my inks. It's just, you know, the same thing that you do if you're trying to build up some ink on your stamp. You don't kind of drag it across, you kind of build it up. Alright, now I do want to bring in some more of this black into this area. Like I said, I don't have like a 70% gray or something like that in pad form, so I have to achieve that value just with the use of, you know, various saturations of black. So, and it's not easier said than done. It's pretty easy to do. I mean, here we have different values here, right? Because I've placed more ink there. So this is copy paper. This is potentially the worst paper you can possibly use in this technique right here, because it's absorbent, it's cheap, whatever, right? So here it is. We've got this little piece of paper. I'll show you what I'm doing here. So this one, it's just lightly dabbing it. Think about it like a, think about it applying like some makeup or something like that to, you know, your little toddler's face for, you know, Halloween. You gotta smash it down, right? You're just gonna lightly put it down. Think of it as like applying like a powder finish or something like that. I'm not tearing up my, you know, tips here at all, right? But you can see what's happening here. See, as I keep working it like that and I keep lightly blending it out like that, I mean, I can drag this out quite far. But here we go from something quite dark to, you know, a little bit lighter, lighter, lighter. Okay, so you can get that type of thing. And if you can get it on a piece of cheap carpet paper, you know, matte paper, you can get it on here too. But you just kind of have to work it. What happens is when people kind of start working it like this, you know, and don't kind of stick into an area, the blends, you know, I mean, you could do that. It tends to come out a lot more textured and a little bit rougher. There's more texture in it because you're aware of the, you know, the wand shape, you know, because of the, you know, the kind of the more sporadic kind of placement of that tip to paper. If you want to go for something kind of more expressionistic, maybe that's your, you know, that will be the method that you would use. Okay, now, see, I'm just kind of applying this. It is soaking in. I'm finding that the page is getting quite dry doing this, so I have to kind of be careful. But I really want to spotlight this guy, you know, the skeleton. I don't know. I say guy, is it male or female? I don't know. I can't tell from the skeletal forms, but anyway. Alright, adding a little bit more tone right here at the base of the rocks. If you've watched any of these other videos, I've kind of mentioned that if you kind of place some of this tone at the base of the rock like this, see, I'm kind of just lightly dabbing it like this on the edge of my applicator here, I can get a little bit of tone right at the base of the rocks, okay? And that kind of anchors them into the scene. It makes it look like they're casting a shadow, and that gives them some nice visual weight, right? See that? Alright, let's bring more attention to this solar eclipse, okay? Bringing more attention to it just kind of means darkening the area around it a little bit more so that it stands out more. So let's obscure some of this area over here a little bit more by putting it into darkness, okay? So what we're doing is we're cutting down the amount of contrast between the imagery and the background. Therefore, that imagery looks a little bit more subdued in terms of its shape and kind of visual statement, you know. Okay. Kind of being careful not to go into those rays around that solar eclipse too much, or if at all. Okay, let's darken that out. If you kind of darken in the areas around this, I guess, lunar eclipse here, okay, the brighter that little, kind of that area around it will seem, okay? Maybe what I'll do too is I'll do like a corona, like a lunar corona around this one. I'll see if I can do that. I need to cut out a piece of paper though, or find something inherently round. That's the size that I want. Okay, I can put a little bit of this underneath the eclipse, okay. That kind of brings that out a little bit more. Okay. Now on this one, I am going to finish it off with some additional media. Okay. It's not just going to be kind of a foundation for, you know, and the finishing touches. I do want to finish this one off. I haven't been using like pigment inks and too much of gel pens in my series here of mood and media. But anyways, kind of darkening it in the areas around there. It's not getting dark very fast because the page is a little bit wet, okay? Not too big of a deal. That's the kind of the price you pay for, you know, getting such smooth gradations and adding a lot of tone in there, which you want, okay? But sometimes it's so wet, it's like you're stamping wet into wet and it's absorbing the paper very fast or building up very fast, so adding ink to it takes a little bit more time, but you kind of want that though because you want it to be nice and blended and kind of graceful in terms of your application of color. So if they're being dried like that, you know, it'd be a little bit more precarious, or a lot more precarious in terms of, you know, where you add things in. Alright, look at that. Dancing in the moonlight, right? Does that say Halloween to you? Yeah. I guess these days with, you know, programs like The Walking Dead, you know, it's kind of that ghoulish, you know, kind of things year-round. It doesn't have to be kind of a Halloween type of notion, you know. Spirits rising, you know. I guess in The Walking Dead they didn't really rise, but, you know, kind of transformed. I haven't been watching the last couple seasons. Kind of get a little burnout. But I do enjoy the show. Alright, that is the darkness that I was going after. Not too huge of a value scheme in here, okay? I'm going to have a lot of really dark tones, kind of adding a little bit of the tone to this rock here. Because it's not too bright, so I'm kind of dampening the reflective quality on those rocks a little bit. Okay, let's do something here. Let's play around with a little bit of hue. Okay, I just happen to have this here. This is a Peach Bellini. A distress ink would work great. I think tea dye and old paper. I like this value scale just fine, this black and white. It's very neutral, okay? But let's kind of warm things up a little bit in terms of the actual temperature of the color that I'll be using. Colors, maybe. But the kind of the spirit of it, too. It kind of warm it up, and, you know, it tends to give kind of a little bit more of a friendlier type of spirit to the scene. Alright, it's kind of a brownish tinge, right? This tea dye right here. Let's add some of it to our sky as well. Let's add some down to the water. We're turning these grays, these neutral grays, into warm grays, okay? And it just takes on a little bit of a richer hue. You know, we're adding temperature, we're introducing temperature into the scene. And there's something kind of a little more, maybe eerie to me. You know, this take on kind of an eerier feel in a way. Let's add some of the tone to the little squiggly marks in my solar eclipse as well. Alright, that was Tito. Let's see if we can warm it up a little bit more. Old paper. Neither one of these colors is very bright. Okay, they're very, you know, they're quite dull. Okay, but that's not to say they're not rich, okay? But potentially made even richer looking with the addition of another sibling color in the form of this old paper. It probably has a little bit more yellow in it than the tea dye. Isn't that right there? I have this Creature of the Black Lagoon that would look really great in here too. Maybe that's one that I'll use in another Halloween card. Okay, now this is very light, but I am adding it to the black just to bring that type of kind of spirit and richness to the scene. Now see, I'm keeping some of it a little bit white, you know, right behind there, a little bit up there, here and there. Okay. Now let's see. I think I might change my foreground imagery here. Before I do that, let me take a look and see if there's any other. There's an antique linen walnut stain. Might as well use them, huh? The antique linen. Let me get some of this ink off of here. Now remember, if this is a lighter color, if I add light over dark, it's not necessarily going to, or it won't, make that area lighter. These are transparent colors that we're working with, okay? They're not opaque. Alright, not much of a change, maybe a tiny bit, but not too much. Walnut stain. I feel like I'm doing some kind of old-fashioned, you know, colorizing of some antique black and white prints in some ways, using these kind of these real light shades, you know, over areas, okay? Pale kind of values. Although walnut stain isn't too light, but when you apply it in this kind of method right here, it does go on fairly light because of the saturated foundation that I've already established with previous inks. Alright, there we go. Alright, let me look at some other imagery. I'm thinking about getting my spooky branch as opposed to just using reeds, okay? Okay, here's a crooked limb here, and here's spooky branch. Both would be very appropriate in some sort of a kind of Halloween type of scene, wouldn't you think? But before I do that, so I was thinking about that thing I was thinking about trying here, and trying for kind of this corona type of imagery, and I thought I would do that. I just have a cap from this little glow-in-the-dark ink that didn't really glow very strong, so I really haven't used it too much, but I'm just going to go for this kind of loose kind of corona around. I don't know if it's going to work or not. It might look really funny, but let's see what it looks like in the end result. It's going to look kind of strange here because I don't have anything else toned in with this pigment ink yet. Alright, the whole idea of this pigment ink, this pad of mine is super, super dry. Yours is probably super, super wet, so don't just dab into it. What you want to do, even with my super dry one, I'm dabbing off a lot of the ink, where it's barely on this, okay? If I dab this, you know, I won't be able to see a thing, but it's only through kind of some repetitive dabs that I can kind of see something. Well, actually I have a little bit more on it than I thought. Let's try to get this in here. It's going to look kind of strange, so I'm going to remove some ink as well after I apply it, okay? I might have to apply some more ink, or get some more ink here. It's kind of like that. Let's do that. It looks really strange right now, but let me work with it a little bit. What I want to do is I kind of want to blend it out. Plus it looks really weird because there's no other texture in the entire scene like it at this point in time, but I plan on adding it in there. Alright, let's kind of blend that out a touch, you know, just light dabbing around it. I can also, if there's too much of it, I just kind of dab in it. It kind of comes off on my finger, and that will also kind of spread it around a little bit. You can use your instant blender, meaning your finger, to blend things in. Okay, there we go. See that little thing like that? Alright, let's add in some fog. Now, sometimes when I'm doing these grayscale things, this kind of looks weird because I didn't retain a lot of the white, and that's the color that this is going to be, so maybe I should retain a little bit more, but let's just go for it. Okay, let's try to add in some of this fog on a kind of a Halloween night is certainly quite appropriate thematically. If you have a hard time using this type of application, it's because you have way too much ink on the tip. It's always the case. People use way too much. I use too much. When I get a brand new pad, which I do sometimes, this one's not brand new, but like I got this unicorn one. I mean, I just barely tap it on it because this is new, you know. So let me show you right here. See, getting some ink on here, it's just kind of going like this, and you're just going like, you're barely touching it, right? And even so, I'll bet there's a lot of ink on there. Yeah, see that? It's leaving these big balls of ink right up there. Can you kind of tell that a little bit? See that? So kind of dab it off, and I just barely touch that on the, you know, the surface of this pad. All right. So that being said, I'll show you what you can do when you get the right amount of ink on here. Okay. Now I'm not pressing into the paper, you know, real hard. I'm just going to barely touch it. See how much ink is there? There's a lot there, and I've kind of already blotted this off. I'm going to take off even more. Okay, here we go. There's even too much. See that right there? I'm kind of adding a little bit down here and there. People add too much of it too. They cover like, you know, like vast areas, and it kind of looks weird. It's a little bit better when you kind of oscillate things, kind of a little bit here, then don't have any, then add a little bit more. Okay. Unless the whole thing is, you know, just kind of blanketed in fog. But if it's kind of like this, then just kind of add it, you know, somewhat sparingly. All right. Okay. Now down here, where this figure is dancing, I'm going to put it in some kind of foreground fog. Okay. Hopefully kind of this gives it kind of that little magical quality. Anytime you see like a forest scene or something like that, figures walking around in a movie, you always notice that kind of that fog in the background. It's kind of moving with the light. It just gives it some visual interest, and it makes things look a little bit more three-dimensional, because inherently you're watching a, you know, two-dimensional movie. So lighting and everything like that is to give, you know, the viewer, you know, the kind of a better idea of a kind of a three-dimensional surface. That's why people's faces are lit in kind of warm and cool colors from both sides usually. It's usually a red and blue light, you know. But anyways, what I'm getting at here is kind of this gives things a bit of dimension in a scene here too. You know, you put this little fog down here and it looks like something is hovering, right? It's not just flat. So just kind of putting some into my water here, because that's where you'd see kind of the fog is where some place has been lit, okay? You wouldn't see it in the deep shadows because there's no light there to illuminate that fog. Okay, see that? It's kind of softening things up a little bit too, right? Okay, I need a little bit more. Take some off after you apply it. Now the lighter your scene is, I mean, you can use more of this if you want to, you know. Just my scene right here is very dark, so I really have to kind of lightly apply it. And when I'm doing this, a lot of times I'm just kind of dabbing it off with my finger. A lot of times I remove more than I apply, or more, you know, more than I retain, because I'll apply it and then I'll take it off, you know, because it's just too much. It stands out, it looks awkward. So I just dab it off. Now, as long as you're not working with Brilliance white pigment ink, okay? Most other ones are, you know, they dry very slowly and you can manipulate them. And besides the Brilliance one, you can remove all of the ink that you've applied anytime, even after the point where it dries. Okay, now one of the things that I was thinking about doing that would be kind of fun is I would be adding in these little, I don't know, whatever they are, kind of little dancing little sprites on the water with them. So I thought I'd put these little, I don't know, little kind of magical things, you know. I mean, like a Tinkerbell has pixie dust, right? Why not give a little bit of that little magic to our friend here, okay? I know, why don't we do something like, let's do this right here. Look at this. See this figure right here? See how it's, you can see it on here better. See how it's kind of dancing. Let's do this little star trail like this, okay? Coming around. It looks like it. Look at the gesture of this form right here. It's like a, you know, dancer. Well, it is, you know, it's a dancing skeleton. But let's do something like this. It has its hands open. Let's do something like this. Let's have this little thing like it's, having such a great time, and he's, let me see if I can get this, a nice graceful kind of arcing, kind of, it looks like a lasso, you know, like that. That's just my base. Let me add in some more here, okay. I'll kind of just follow around a little bit. I mean, if I didn't like that, I can just rub that off and it'll come right off. You know, these gel pen dots. This is a Uniball Signo 1.0 gel pen, white gel pen. It works very well. You don't have to use that brand or that type. I'll add some kind of larger ones and smaller ones. So this little figurine is kind of dancing by himself, lone figure, or herself. And they're not show-offs at all. Everything's just done for itself and it's having a great time. Okay, so it's kind of coming around. It's kind of building up like that. Let's make the area right here a little bit more prominent. I'll put it right in the hands. Maybe it's conjuring or something. I think my pen is going dry. I've used it so much. Let me see. Here we go. You can see my ink has gone down there. There isn't any ink. It's really quite empty in here. See that? All that ink was up there. Look at that. That's what you want from your gel pens. You want to know that it's, you know, it's worked, you know, from the, you know, from the beginning, and you've used it to the end. So many other types kind of clog up, you know. And if you're a crafter and watching this, you know what I'm talking about. These ones work pretty good. Having this go in front of the moon here. Let's make some of these up here a little bit larger. Maybe it's, as it comes over here, maybe it's coming towards us. Always, when I do these types of things, you know, where, you know, these little dots are kind of emitting or whatever, you know, it looks like it's coming from something. I like the idea of it kind of being this little fable of like kind of where stars, you know, come from, you know, from a little figure or something like that. I did it for this fish one time. I think I called it Star Maker or something like that. It was just this bottom fish and it had bubbles coming out. But I thought it looked cool if I kind of continue those bubbles right up into the sky, as if it's you know, that fish is the kind of a star maker, or one of them. Okay, look at that. A little trail of stars, you know, isn't it? It's kind of fun. Down here, let me bring it around a little bit more. Or maybe it's just, you know, this little character is kind of manipulating the stars. I think I'm out of ink in this one as well. Wow. I do love them, so that might have happened. Alright, so look at that. Kind of this magical little type. I have 3 of these pens, and they're all, don't tell me they're all kind of dry. I can't see the ink in any of them anymore. In the reservoir. Okay, this one has a little bit more. Time to order some more of these. Okay, there we go. There's my little creature. My little creature. Suddenly this scene has become about these dots here, for me, which they often do. You know, it's about these stars in the sky, or sometimes now there's a lot of these here, but they are a very small feature, you know, featured individually, but look what that did. I mean, that really added a lot of dimension, I would say. And it, I don't know, it certainly changed the spirit, no pun intended, of the piece, the visual spirit of it. I think it kind of made it more kind of whimsical, and kind of there's a movement to it. Just kind of a celebration, you know. It's more, I don't know, festive. Alright, now let's go in here and kind of enhance some of these stars, okay? Let's make this kind of texture here not quite so monotonous, although I do think it's exciting, but from a visual standpoint, I think it could stand a few extra little things. Let's make some of these kind of twinkle, okay? Adding a little bit of a glowing light to a few. Maybe a few of the larger ones. I can go for some of the smaller ones too, but so what it's kind of doing, it's kind of making them glow. I wouldn't recommend making all of them glow, although this is a really fun technique. In addition, let's add a few kind of glowing ones around the skeleton, like it's kind of the power of the power of the individual. Kind of adding a larger glow around some too, you know, kind of starting in that little dot and just kind of tapping around it and kind of spreading it out a little bit. It's just so there's larger ones and smaller glows. Just for some variation. Okay, I really love that. I haven't done that before to my little skeleton, but look at that. You really changed the spirit of it, I feel. Alright, let's see if we can do something now too. This is what I like to do too for my, with my gel pens. Let's wipe this off here. But I like to bring out some highlights, so the skeleton is a little bit dark. So I'm going to try to get it to stand out a little bit more. Let's put this one of those instances. I really rarely try to stay within the lines, but on this one I do want this little gel pen. I'm not trying to draw everything, but I'm just putting a few little highlights here and there on the skeleton, just so it does stand out a little bit, maybe on some of the rib cage. It might be a dot here and there only. Just gotta stay away from that eye socket. some bones. Okay, so there's little white highlights on that skeleton, kind of bringing it out a little bit more, where it got a little bit more obscure with that tone kind of wiped right into it. Okay, but let's kind of back it out and let's see what it'll look like, kind of from arm's distance. Now I'm thinking about adding in. Okay, I always forget about these. Well, not always. I do use them, but sometimes I don't think about it in the beginning. But look at this. This is a Shuttle Art from one of my 180 colors gel pen set. But this kind of tone kind of goes with, you know, the Distress inks. Sort of like kind of pale orange peachish-ish color. Is this working or not? Oh, okay, here it comes. Now, a lot of these, I'd have to scribble it around to get it going, but this is the first time I've used a lot of these colors. I mean, there's 180 colors. I don't do a lot of gel pen work with the colored gel pens, so a lot of these scenes will be the first time I've used it. But anyways, what I'm doing is I'm kind of adding some highlights on the tops of some of these rocks, but they're in a tone, so they're going to be in a value that's darker than white. Okay, maybe I'll just leave the white highlights for kind of my subject matter and these stars, you know, just so it stands out a little bit more. But that being said, some of these rocks could use a little bit of a highlight on the tops of them. I think it just as shading kind of gives a little bit of dimension to your forms, sort of highlights. Okay, so you can see it just right on the top surfaces. See, as it starts moving into the darkness over here, I spread out my dots a little bit more and kind of peter them off. So let's take a look at this rock right here. Okay, I mean, it looks okay right now, but let's add a little bit of kind of little highlights on it. Okay, like this. Let's do it on a couple of these rocks. And now suddenly, I think the rock, do it on these ones as well. Now suddenly that rock seems a little bit more dimensional. Maybe it's being illuminated, who knows, by this little twinkly light, you know, formation. Alright, okay. Let's do something here. Let's add a few of these dots, these colored dots, into this little parade of lights. I suddenly got an idea. There's kind of these warm tones in here, right? Let's take and add a little bit of extra, I don't know, zing into it. This is a gold Uniball Signo pen. Okay, the gold would look okay with this kind of color scheme. It doesn't really stand out. In fact, you can't really even see it too much. Actually, it's kind of a little bit more of a yellowy gold, so it does stand out a little bit more to me than I thought it would. Let's have some of that color in this little, I guess, the kind of procession or trail of dots. Let me see if I can show it to you. See those? See that right there? It kind of stands out a little bit more, those gold ones. There's some gold down here too. Kind of sticks out if you kind of turn it in the light. And that's what's kind of fun if you give your cards away to people, you know. It's those extra little things like that that can add, I don't know, just dimension into your piece, you know, the kind of that extra little touch, you know, that's kind of more surprise than anything. Here's a glitter gold pen. I don't think this is going to show up because these ones are a little bit more translucent, but it doesn't look too bad. The Shuttle Art 180, actually it's a 360 set, but it's 180 colors. There's just 180 refills for all of your colors if you can ever find the one that matches it up, you know, and that's if you ever run out of ink. I don't foresee myself with the way that I use these pens to be running out of ink, but anyways, it comes with the pastels, glitter, metallic ones. Okay, let's see if I can see it at all. There's some on here, so you can see those ones that are really standing out, and there's some that are a little bit more subtle. I can barely see it, but I can see it sitting here, but there's ones that are a little bit more glittery than metallic that are showing up there. So anyways, let's see. That looks pretty good to me. Alright, let me go see it. I don't have to go and find it. Here's my VIII. I need something fairly dark to stamp out my foreground imagery here. Let's see, which one do I want to go for? This or this. I could also just use the reeds too. The reeds actually wouldn't look bad. Let's do that. I guess the reeds too, it'll kind of stay in the spirit of theme of these mood media. I did add, you know, a couple extra images, you know. Let's do that. I'm adding the VIII. The VIII is a really dark black pigment ink, and it'll be really bold against that. Look how bold that is right there. Look how great that looks. That VIII. Super dark impression. Nice light, even pressure, okay. I think I'll put this all the way across this way. Sometimes I leave an opening in here, but I'll leave it more like we're kind of someone kind of peeking into, you know, a scene that maybe no one's seen before or something like that. Or it's like the legend of, you know, this dancing skeleton bringing our stars to, adding stars to our sky, night sky, once a year. Anyway, alright. I feel like adding a little bit more tone up here in the left and right. I wonder if I can do that. Let me see if I can do that here. I wasn't going to, but let's do it here. Black. Okay, let's see if I can kind of tip the edges. I call it tipping the edges. I don't know what you would call it. It's just kind of adding a stronger value, that final touch. I did add black up there before, but it was kind of dry, or it dried lighter, and you know, because the page was kind of a little bit wet, it wasn't transferring, you know, those applications of taps of ink weren't applying as strongly as I'd want. So let's go for a little bit more of this edge here. Corners, not edge. A little bit of the edge, but mostly primarily corners, and that'll kind of cap off our top a little bit more. See that right there? Kind of, it's a little bit darker there and there. Alright, so there we have it. Our little dancing skeleton. I wouldn't call it spooky, you know. But what we've done is we've kind of given it a kind of a murky, you know, I wouldn't call it terribly inviting type of color scheme. But then just adding this little skeleton in here, you know, as far as kind of the emotional content of this scene. Even though it's a skeleton, it's a dancing one, which is kind of fun. Then I added this little swoosh in here, which I think is kind of fun too and playful. So we've taken something, kind of added somewhat of a kind of a whimsical element to our first holiday card here, and that would end up being a lunar eclipse, not a solar eclipse, but see that little tone in there? Then when you add the tone in, it kind of adds to it, so I don't have a problem with that, kind of not stamping it completely out in the center there. Is fine with me. I need to remember to clean that off as far as that dust goes, though. But anyway, just some fun stuff. Fairly easy one. You know, the thing that took a little bit of time was adding in those little stars like that, or a little, you know, glowing little things of light. With the gel pen, ooh, way too much ink, and I need to smash that down. I like when it goes on nice and gradually. I think some of that rubbed off a little bit when I was doing that, so reapplying some of this. Get a kind of glowing look. And a couple other places too. I think that made for a nice feature within the scene. This pigment ink does seem to dry darker. Okay. Sometimes with dye-based inks they dry lighter, you know. Pigment inks, they dry darker. They're not as kind of they're not as opaque, you know, as I'd like. So yeah, let's add some more down here. It's kind of that magic. Alright. There we go. Kind of a whimsical look, or my whimsical take on kind of a Halloween scene. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it. I had fun. That was my first card of the year as far as my holiday scenes go. Yeah, I guess I did a snowy scene before, but using this composition, but I don't know, Halloween here.